We think that people really need to sit down and have a conversation because not everybody's house is the same. Not everybody's financial situation is the same way. Not everyone's driving record's the same way. Not everybody has the same kind of business with the same number of employees and exposures and products and so forth.
Everyone, welcome to another great episode of Mint Money, where we talk about all things finance in the great state of Michigan. I'm so happy to have Fred Edmond in the podcast from Frankenmuth Insurance. And so, Fred, I have to ask, starting off, when you initially joined Frankenmuth Insurance all the way back in 1998 as a marketing group coordinator, did you ever think you'd star in a company commercial or be the future CEO?
No, and no. Definitely not as far as doing the video. That was something that I don't want to say it came out of left field, but it came out of our branding effort to rebrand. That was back in 2015. But no, certainly did not ever think I'd be cutting a video of any kind. But it was a fun process going through working with the film crew and everything. So I enjoyed it. Although I realized I should probably not quit my day job. As far as career-wise goes, though, I never really set out to say, I want a certain role, I want a certain title, here's what I want to do. I really like the insurance business. I like what it stands for. I like what it was all about. And I just wanted to serve in a role that I felt like I could really contribute in a meaningful way. I could really help the company. I could help our stakeholders. And at the same time, doing something that I felt like was challenging, it was rewarding, and something that I enjoyed. I didn't really want a routine thing, but I've been in the business now for 40 years. And during that time, I've served in a variety of capacities. I started right out of college working in the claims division for another company, not for Frankenmuth Insurance. Worked in claims, worked in underwriting. When I was in claims, I handled large catastrophes around the country, Hurricane Hugo in South Carolina, Hurricane Andrew in Florida, big fires out in California. Was an underwriter for a while, was a field sales representative, worked in marketing, product management, government affairs. And so it's kind of funny, you get to the stage of your career and you start to realize you did a lot of things and you had a pretty broad foundation. And so that really created some opportunities to move into some leadership roles and take on more areas of responsibility. So I never really sat down and said, boy, someday I really want to run a company. But as you start to kind of build up your foundation, you start to think, yeah, I think I can do that. And so certainly with succession planning and career development, those conversations start, far in the future, but never anticipated that I would have the fortune of serving as CEO and serving such a fine company as Frankenmuth Insurance.
I could definitely see that, especially given all the background of your different experiences has definitely led you very well into building what you had just mentioned, a really good, solid foundation, just like what anyone should have with their own insurance plans. But I think it really bodes really well towards what our whole topic of today's conversation is, which is really how long and how historic Frankenmuth Insurance has been, not only in the insurance agency, but in Michigan too. I mean, even when you joined Frankenmuth Insurance, this is a crazy statistic that in doing research for the podcast, in the U.S., only 0.5% of companies are over 100 years old, which is crazy because Frankenmuth Insurance is over 150 years old at this point. And so truly in a league of its own. And so, I mean, I know this is an impossible question to go say it was due to A, B, and C, but in your opinion, what have been some of the long-standing tips to being successful, to really being around for such a long time?
Sure. One thing I might add, too, that I think is unique about Frankenmuth is not only has our company been around for over 150 years, but there are 4 other companies in Frankenmuth that have been around for 100 years or longer. Star of the West Milling from 1848, Schaefer and Beerline, which is an auto dealership. They were founded in 1852, which was before the auto, but they were a blacksmith back in the day for all the horse and buggies. So they took that and moved it into the automotive dealership area. Frankenmuth Woolen Mill from 1894 and the Frankenmuth News from 1906. So we are one of 5 companies. We were founded in 1868 and just celebrated 150 years back in 2018. But looking back on what's made this company be able to survive and be successful throughout the years. 150 years is a long time. And when you look back during that time, there's a lot of crazy things that have happened in our country and in our state. You think of the Great Depression, the Great Recession. We've had numerous storms, tornadoes, hailstorms, all kinds of things. And over the years, the company has been very resilient. And I really think it comes back to the way that this company has been managed and run really right from the start, which is a very conservative, a very prudent approach. Um, we really understand and we're very intentional about understanding our business, knowing what's driving our results and managing our performance. And so, nobody likes to have surprises. Last year was certainly a big surprise when we looked at some of the significant hailstorms we had last year. And while there were four large storms in Michigan last year that we haven't seen ever, as far as I can recall. And when that type of activity happens, basically the company has been managed from the standpoint that we're always going to be here to take care of our policyholders. We have what's called our policyholder contingency reserve fund. Some call it capital, some call it surplus. And we manage that very carefully, very prudently. But going back to day one, the company has always been focused on the customer service experience. Even back in the 1860s and 70s and so on, we had this theme of neighbor helping neighbor. And it truly was neighbor helping neighbor back in the day before the company was even founded. If somebody's barn burned down or blew down or fire damaged their homes, the community would come together and they'd start building and rebuilding, like you see, like a lot of these Amish communities do. But here in Frankenmuth, they realized that these events do happen, and we should plan for them and we should prepare for them. So rather than waiting for it to happen and then respond, they decided that we're going to form an insurance company. And basically, people that wanted to be insured would contribute, pay a premium, if you will, even back in the day, so that they could financially be prepared for it. So I really think that the foresight and I think the wisdom of our initial founders really set the stage for the company. And then throughout the years, as we've managed to grow the company, expand the company, we've just been very careful, very prudent in the way we've managed it. But for the most part, I guess I look back on how we do things, and we reinforce this with our employees all the time, is that we take a consistent, disciplined approach to our underwriting, our pricing, our investing. And we really, from that standpoint, we put the highest priority on our customer experience, especially like I think you and I were talking early on. Um, you know, when somebody has a claim, they want to make sure that you're going to be there for them. And that's the most important experience that we can create for this customer, is that when they have an unfortunate event, they have a claim, that if it's a good experience in light of an unfortunate circumstance, then we create a customer loyalty that people understand that bad things can happen and may happen again. And that creates a loyalty that customers will stay with us for many, many years. So again, I guess briefly, again, looking back, we've had great founders and had great leaders throughout the history of this company, and just tried to take a very careful, cautious, prudent, conservative approach.
Sounds like the local school district might also have some pretty good curriculum over there too, to be able to go create so many good, long-standing businesses as well. But going back to your point about technology, I find it so interesting. I read a really cool article I think it came out when the most recent hurricane hit Fort Myers Beach in Florida, which I think would have been a year or two ago. And it was a day or two after the hurricane. These different insurance companies, I don't know if they ran the operations directly themselves or if they sub-advised this part out, but they would have drones go over their policyholders' homes to be able to go tell if they're wind damage or not, which I think is just so futuristic. I mean, you're almost looking at the Jetsons, but I think the Jetsons was maybe what year was it? Maybe centered around maybe.
That's probably in the 60s.
Yeah,
the
going back
60s. Over 50 years.
Yeah, and so I mean, you have all this modern technology now, but I guess as a CEO for yourself, how do you think about what technology, as it's very much on the leading edge and the bleeding edge for technology? How do you go about trying to integrate that? Because I could imagine, that's some really cool pieces of technology, but obviously you have to go measure from an ROI perspective. I mean, obviously the customer experience, as you mentioned, by far and away the best thing you can relate it back to. But how do you go about weighing those decisions?
Yeah, it's interesting because the insurance industry has typically been pretty slow to move, pretty stodgy. But with the advancement of technology and systems and automation here in recent times, things are moving at light speed. And we had a CEO several years ago that really saw that in order for us as a company to continue to grow, that we needed to leverage these tools and these technologies and all the automation that was available at the time. So it's a mindset. It's recognizing that the tools that we have today help us do our job better, help us do our job faster, help us do it more efficiently. We can process far more information now than we ever could. It's like, think about your cell phone. You can't leave home without it now. I was traveling a week ago, and I was telling one person, I said, it's worse to lose your phone now almost than to lose your wallet. You're so dependent on technology. But there's a tremendous amount of technology that is in the insurance industry, coming into the insurance industry. And Frankenmuth has historically been a leader. We have received numerous awards ever since I've been here, which is more than 25 years, for the adoption of technology, for leveraging it, and really being a leader in the industry. Right now, this year, we're actually concluding a 10-year investment to revamp our core operating systems. And so we're replacing all of our legacy systems. We're replacing our claim system, our billing system, our policy admin system, our document output system, you name it. We are replacing it all and have been. And the approach that we took is that we did what was called a full suite implementation. We implemented the claims, the billing, the policy, all these things I mentioned at the same time, where it's not really the typical approach in the industry. Most companies will put a claim system in place. They might roll it out for personal auto coverage. They might roll it out for a couple of the states that they're in, and then gradually expand it to more states, expand it to like homeowners or commercial business. And then they'll do that with other like policy administration. We did it all at once. And at the time, it seemed like probably one of the craziest things that we did. But some companies could take up to 10 years to roll out just a claim system. And in 10 years, we'll have rolled out all these to all of our states for every line of business that we're in. And at the same time, we've converted all of our legacy policies from our old system onto the new system. So it takes a huge investment, but it's really, early on, it was to leverage um, the efficiencies that you can build in the system, which is true still today. But it's almost become table stakes that if you don't find a way to ingest these tools, these technologies, these systems, you're going to get left behind. Because what it's going to allow us to do, and we believe this, is it's going to allow us to realize the benefits from the efficiencies that we can do things faster. We can do more rather than adding more and more people. We can leverage the systems to do that with us. We can be much more cost effective. And when our costs are contained, that can then lead to better pricing for our customers. So it's kind of like a full circle thing, but it really takes that commitment to investing in technology. And again, this kind of goes back to leadership many, many years ago that believed in adopting the latest technologies to make it a better work experience for everybody and to do things more efficiently.
Yeah, when I was reviewing your corporate history in preparation for the podcast, I thought that was so interesting that, I mean, even from the early 80s, when computers were just starting to come on the mainframe, you guys were investing so much money in technology. And it really
Mhm.
takes a real special kind of attitude because exactly to your point, I mean, maybe instead of just with your 10 examples you had or 10 different operating systems, maybe just do one. Maybe throw some patches on it, maybe some duct tape on it, but do 10 all at once. I mean, really shows the amount of investment, for lack of better words, that you're willing to go put within not only your own efficiencies, but again, going back to that customer experience. And I think relating to that customer experience, as you see more new insurance agencies shift the way they conduct their business, and so you see a lot of these new entrants going about it over the internet, what makes Frankenmuth Insurance committed to still doing business in person?
Yeah. So with your question, it's more of startup insurance companies coming into conducting business. versus agencies, and I'll explain that here in a second. But insurance has become very technical, very complex, very complicated, and with all of the automation that we just talked about that's coming into the industry, there's there's a wealth of information that people can have at their fingertips. You can go research insurance policies, coverages, limits, companies. You can get pricing. You can even apply and have a policy issued for you online. And some of those companies are called direct. They go direct to the consumer. We are what's called an independent agent company, which means we don't sell directly to the consumer. We sell through independent agencies that we carefully choose and select to represent us. And so while the industry has become very technical, very kind of almost insurance savvy, insurance dependent, we still really believe that it's a people business. You can buy a lot of things. I think Amazon's a great example of stuff that you can buy. You can go on Amazon today and have something delivered tomorrow, which is crazy. And while you can do that with insurance, we think that buying proper insurance protection is more than saving 15% in 15 minutes. We think that people really need to sit down and have a conversation, because not everybody's house is the same. Not everybody's financial situation is the same way. Not everyone's driving record's the same way. Not everybody has the same kind of business with the same number of employees and exposures and products and so forth. So we really think it's that conversation with that insurance expert, that insurance agent that you can sit down with and say, this is my situation, and this is what I need from a protection standpoint. And we think that that is what really resonates with people. But again, you can go online, and there are people that choose to buy online, and we don't have a problem with that. We're not trying to change people's habits, but humans are humans. They still like to know, they like to deal with people. And I've always said that when it comes to insurance business, people will do business with those that they know, they like, and they trust. And if my house burns down, if I'm injured in a car accident, nobody's going to sit there and say, boy, I'm glad I saved time and money when I bought that policy. They forget about that long after that transaction is done. And they want to know, okay, my house just burned down. Do I have the right coverage? And that's not the time to find out, because you went online and you did a quote with no help from anybody, maybe a chat bot. But that's not the time that you want to find out that you didn't have the proper coverage. And there are more and more coverages becoming available, more options today. So we really believe that this is still a people business, and we're fully invested in the independent agency system.
I couldn't agree with those points more. I think it makes all the good sense to, I mean, just have another human on the other side and really be able to, not only counterbalance thoughts, but be able to go bring up your own experiences with different products as well. And so, no, I really appreciate you mentioning all those different things. And so I think many people may not know that Frankenmuth Insurance and your affiliates do business much over the Midwest and the East Coast. And so I could imagine geographically, especially how much distance that may cover, how on earth do you try and keep a consistent culture? I mean, quite honestly, I mean, not only geographically, but over a couple thousand employees. It sounds like it must be a daunting challenge.
Yeah, Frankenmuth Insurance operates in 15 states. We have over 850 employees. We have more than 800 independent agency partners under contract. And in those agencies, we have thousands of licensed insurance professionals to represent our company and sell our products. So you're right. That's a big, wide footprint. But just like the previous question about people buying directly, online, we believe that because this is a people business, it means relationships matter. And so it's not just from the consumer standpoint, but it's relationships with our agents that we do business with. It's with our employees. And so we put a high priority on the relationships that we have with both of those. But it requires being very intentional. You just can't take things for granted. And so every year we have a number of what we call agency relationship events throughout the states that we're in. We will fly people down there. We will have people that work remotely down there, and they show up, and it's a time for us to connect personally with people, to do some fun things together, to talk about the business, and to really engage. And it kind of gets back to that thing I mentioned before, that agents will do the same thing, is that they'll do business with the people that they know, they like, and they trust. So it works both ways. We find the same thing with our employees. We will do regular employee appreciation events. Through every quarter, we do a company-wide communication through a Zoom call like this. We believe in keeping our people informed. We want them to know what's happening with the company, how we're doing, what's impacting our results, and what we're doing about it. And we find that the more that you communicate, the more that you keep people informed, that you build trust, and it really starts to nurture those relationships. And when there is that trust, then there is that it's more than just a job. It's more than just a transaction kind of thing. But since the pandemic, we've got employees working in more than just the 15 states that we do business in. And so what it's done for us is for our existing employees, being able to work remotely has given them tremendous flexibility. People change their lifestyles during the pandemic. Our building was closed for a year and a half, from March of 2020 till September of 2021. And when you work from home for a year and a half, people get used to that and they adapt their lifestyles. And while a lot of industries and businesses are bringing people back in and mandating that they're coming back in the building, we found that our people were just as effective, just as responsive, working from home as if they were working here in the building. And we constantly ask our agents, how are we doing? What's our response like? And they said, I can't tell if you're working from home or if you're at home in your pajamas. All I know is you take my call, you get back to me, you take care of business when you say you're going to, you return my calls, you return my emails, I hear from you, and that's not common in the industry. And so we looked at it from the standpoint of, a happy employee tends to be a good employee. And you might have good employees that if you frustrate them and you make them do some things that maybe aren't really necessary, then that might not really work to your advantage. So we've been very intentional again about supporting a remote work environment. And so with employees that we've hired then during this time, is that it's allowed us to hire people from a broader geographic footprint, if you will. We've hired people in states that we don't even do business in. We're anywhere from Arizona to Connecticut. We even have one employee in Hawaii. It's one of those things where if you treat people like adults and professionals and you set what the expectation is, and then you follow up on it, people like to be trusted. And that is such a big part of our culture, is that we trust our people work hard, they do what they say they're going to do. There's something very special about our company, and every quarter I thank them for it. I don't think you can ever underestimate just the power of saying thank you to employees. It's not always about how much you're going to pay me. It's not always about that next job promotion. It's about somebody respects me, somebody values me, somebody appreciates me. And that is the type of stuff that you just can't take for granted. And so it takes an extra effort that sometimes you think, wow, this isn't really doing insurance, but it's part of the insurance business and it's part of any business to let your people know that they matter and that you care for them. Because there's a lot of uncertainty that's happening throughout our economy and in the entire workforce. And whether it's the remote work, whether it's, layoffs or downsizing, which is really happening quite a bit in the insurance industry this past year. We remind our people that we've never laid anybody off. And that's very encouraging for them. And it gives them that confidence that I don't have to work today worrying, am I going to lose my job? So we treat them with care. We let them know that they matter. And, I think when you take care of people, they return it.
I think what you just mentioned right there, I think can easily explain why you guys have been in business for over 150 years, never laying off a single person through, gosh, I don't know how many economic cycles over the last 150 years across many different geographies too. I mean, it really has a testament to how you run your business, especially from the conservative manner that you mentioned, right? Because I think we've all seen it from news articles, whether it was most recently that hurricane down in Fort Myers Beach or possibly some other insurance agencies out in California. They get hit with a lot of claims. They go bankrupt, really unfortunate. And so
Right.
It's sad to go see that happen, but I think it only a truer testament to how you manage your company.
Thank you.
Oh, of course. And so as you see new opportunities come up within this landscape, how have you evaluated to see if it's a good market to enter? I know as of late, pet insurance has been picking up quite a bit. And so I don't know if pet insurance isn't necessarily. I know that could be a more of a smaller, more niche market, but as new opportunities come up like that, what's that decision process like as you think about, is it good? Maybe not.
Yeah, so we've got a couple different ways that we approach it. Is one from just a product standpoint, which you were talking about, which is pet insurance, and we did take a look at it, and we've seen where the trends are. But we do have a product team, both on the commercial line side for business and on the personal line side for auto, home, and pets and things like that. And so we've got people that's all they do. They manage our products. They look at how our products are performing. They look at what the trends are in the marketplace. A lot of times we'll get requests from agents to say, boy, would you consider offering this type of product or that type of product? And it starts to let us know that there may be a demand out there. But what we'll do is when it comes to a product, we will look at the market. We'll look at who else is offering this type of coverage? Is the market flooded with carriers doing it? And if we're like the 50th company to the table, it's probably not a good time to get in. But if we can get in early, cyber insurance was something that we began offering very early on before a lot of other carriers were. And we started providing a cyber policy for our business owners so early that a lot of our agents didn't even understand what the coverage was. And so we had to do a lot of training. We had to do a lot of educating of ourselves. But we looked at that landscape, and to be able to see where things are going, sometimes you hit it right and it goes well. And sometimes you look down the road and you chase something, you say, well, everything looked good at the time, but we ventured into this product and it didn't do so well. But basically, we just look at the trends. And we look at where things are going, and we look what the demand is, and we look at whether or not we think that we have a place in there, and if we can make a go of it, and can we, is it something our agents will sell? Because we work with independent agents, and if they don't understand it, like cyber, we've got to explain to them, this is why it's good for your customers. You don't want one of your customers saying, I've been hacked, and you didn't sell me the coverage. So that helps us create that need for them to be able to understand it and sell it. So from a product standpoint, we go through a pretty rigorous review. We do the same thing when we look at geographic state expansion. We look at, and we've got a standing list for both commercial and personal of all the states that we are not currently doing business in and that are available to expand into. And we look at the environment from a regulatory standpoint. We look at the legal environment. We look at the economic situation. Is it growing? Is it contracting? What do the demographics look like? Is the state growing? Is it shrinking? Are there more homes being built? Are there more businesses starting up? And then we also look at where it is from an exposure to natural disasters, whether it's hurricanes on the coast, whether it's earthquakes on the identified fault lines, whether it's Tornado Alley, things like that. So we do a pretty extensive review of these broad categories, and then we kind of score them and say, well, from a legal standpoint, this is a 1. From a regulatory standpoint, this is a 5. And then we add them all up, and then you do like a scoring system. And what that does is that helps us identify where the priority state should be. We will also look at what I'll call contiguous states. So when we first expanded into Georgia in 2004, we started writing a lot of business, and our agents said, we have a lot of business in Alabama. We have offices in Alabama. If you could open that up, I have a business in Georgia that has a sister location in Alabama that I can't write with you right now. So we'll look at those contiguous exposures where there's kind of like a companion that goes with it. So we'll look at that. And then the third way that we'll also look at it is more broadly, which is not from a contiguous standpoint, but how can we diversify our risk? How can we reduce the geographic concentration that we have in a certain area by going out to a different part that's not tied into the whole Midwest? So, and then fourthly, this one is different. This is not one that we really plan for. This is one that sometimes it just falls in our lap, and I'll call these opportunistic hires. These are where somebody comes along that has extensive knowledge, experience, and expertise in a certain area that we don't have. And it's been something that we've always thought, boy, that would be something that we should really get into, like from a product standpoint, but nobody here really understood it that well. So that product may not be on the the list of priorities to go after. But when we find that here's somebody that has 30 years or 35 years, whatever, of knowledge and experience, we'll say, you know what, we weren't really planning on that, but you're not going to find a person like this very often. So let's hire that person. And we did that in 2016 when we expanded into what's called surety. And surety is a completely different type of coverage and protection than property casualty insurance. And so it requires a whole different skill set and expertise and underwriting and understanding the risks. But we found somebody that really understood the business, and that allowed us to stand that up. And so now we're writing surety business in 47 states.
That's
So kind of
incredible.
a
Wow.
laundry
Hmm.
list of how we approach it, but there's products, there's states, there's existing states, there's new states, and so there's always something that's happening from a new opportunity standpoint.
Certainly, no, I could see that. And I think I appreciate you mentioning the example that you had about the metric rating system. I mean, it's a really easy, I shouldn't say easy. I can imagine there's a lot of work that goes into making it, but it's a good, easy way to go break down, okay, these are these factors. This is how we're going to score them. And this is what makes sense. And so distilling it down into an easy decision. Now, move along. I could imagine a harder decision, Fred, was well, maybe it wasn't as hard, but anyway, why was it important for Frankenmuth Insurance to reorganize itself into a mutual holding company at the beginning of 2023?
Yeah, it's a great question. It is a trend that is happening more and more with mutual insurance companies. So historically, mutual insurance companies have been at somewhat at a disadvantage to the stock insurance companies. And so the difference between the two is that a mutual insurance company is basically owned and controlled by the policyholders. They have a policy with us, they've got policy rights, but they also have voting rights. They vote for our board of directors, elect officers, and so forth. Where a stock insurance company, they're run and controlled by their investors. And so there's a whole different mindset, and which also led to me leaving my prior company and coming here, because I left a company that was a private company, became a stock company, and the world changed, and I came here, which was a mutual company. So the way that mutual companies have been at a disadvantage to the stock companies is when it comes to raising capital. The way that the mutual insurance companies, I'll say, grow their capital, and that's that policyholder surplus I mentioned before, is that we grow that when we have underwriting profit and when we have investment income. And that can be very difficult when we're in these challenging environments. When we talk about the industry's been facing all the inflation and rising costs and storms and things that have really challenged the underwriting side. And then on the investment side, with rising interest rates, have also created some challenges in the investment portfolio. But the mutual companies have to be very disciplined in growing their capital and how they manage their business. And it really is all through their operational results. With a stock company, they can raise capital by simply issuing more stock. They sell more stock, more policyholders buy their stock, and next thing you know, they've got more capital. So the mutual companies didn't have that way of approaching it to raise capital. So there's a structure that you mentioned called it's a mutual holding company structure. We converted to that in 2023, and what that does is that it somewhat puts the mutual insurance companies on more of a level playing field with the stock companies. And what I mean by that is we still grow our capital through our operational results, through our investment income, but under a mutual holding company structure, we technically can issue stock in the company. Now, there's some limitations and some restrictions as to how much of that we can sell so that we maintain being a mutual company, being owned by the policyholders who have the voting rights in the company. And so what this does is this allows mutual companies to raise capital through, call it an initial public offering, an IPO, and you can raise capital for strategic purposes, strategic investments, the technology investment that we've made. In many cases, some companies would have to do a public offering to raise capital to make that kind of investment. But you can raise capital for strategic purposes, to replenish capital from catastrophic events, or to use it for merger and acquisition opportunities. So there's a variety of options that mutual companies now can raise capital. And so we form this structure in 2023, not because we had a need for capital, but because we wanted to have the flexibility that should we be in a position that we needed to or wanted to raise capital, we had already put all of the building blocks in place. So it took a full year to actually integrate that structure. And then going before that, it was probably 2 years that we were already having conversations with our board of directors about what is a mutual holding company? What does it do? What are the other options for raising capital? Is this a slippery slope to demutualization and becoming a stock company? And so maintaining our mutuality, making sure that our policyholders retain their voting rights is critical and important to us. We don't want to be beholden to stockholders or shareholders. And so basically, we converted to this structure to give us the flexibility that should there be a need in the future, we were already in position to do so.
Planning for the future, just exactly why people will buy an insurance policy before you might need to go
Yeah,
use it. Hey, everything comes full
exactly.
circle. And so, Fred, these next couple questions are some of the favorites I get to go ask all of our guests. And so, what would you say is your most important daily habit?
My important daily habit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll say on weekdays, it's I get up at 5:30 every day. I go sit out in my comfortable chair in the living room and I do my daily Bible readings and then I work out. And that's usually by 7:30 I'm ready to hit the shower and ready to get ready for work. But I find that I have a little quiet time in the morning. I get up early, I get started, and I like having a workout because it's just too hard to get a workout in during the day or after work.
The best time to go do it. I do the exact same thing. And so, I can imagine I might know the answer to this question now that I could see possibly a golf painting right behind you. But what would you say, Fred, is your favorite TV or streaming show that you're currently watching or have recently?
Oh yeah, Full Swing. You're probably thinking about Full Swing on
Yep.
Netflix. Seen both seasons of that. Love
Hmm.
that. I do like golf, um, and I like to watch. I don't like to watch all golf tournaments on TV, but there are some, definitely the majors and
Hmm.
a couple others. So I really like. I do like watching golf, which as a kid I could never understand why my dad watched golf, but I get it now. Um, I like watching football. I like watching college basketball. Aside from that, we don't watch a ton of TV, but we do every once in a while. We will binge on some of these series, and probably the one that we just finished up was on Netflix called Suits. We had watched a couple seasons of The Lincoln Lawyer, and really liked that. And when we were done, it said, "Hey, here's something else that you might like," and we got into that and watched it. And so it was fun. It was kind of entertaining.
Of course. No, I could definitely see that. And I have to ask a follow-up question. So we all know that Frankmuth is home to many, many great golf courses. I know the Fortress is a challenging but a great course. And so if you had to say, I mean, I can't imagine like trying to go pick which is your favorite kid, but if you had to go pick one of your favorite golf courses to go play at, which one would that be? Anywhere in Michigan.
Oh, in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, I love Arcadia Bluffs.
Mm-hmm.
I think Arcadia Bluffs is one of the top courses in the country. Um, but yeah, if that was in Michigan, that's the course. If I had one course to play in Michigan, that would be it.
I have
But it'd
yet
be
to.
a hard choice because there's a lot of other great golf courses in Michigan.
Oh, it's nothing short. I mean, even our Great Lakes Bay region, there's got to be 12, 20, 20. I've never done an official count or anything close to it, but just so many great opportunities for if you want a quick 9 holes, there's this. But if you want a challenging 18 holes where, you might lose a couple sleeves of golf balls, hey, there's options for every skill level out there.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And then my last question within lightning round, Fred, is if you can be remembered for just one thing, what would it be?
One thing. Well, I'll give you two. So one personal and one professional. If I could be remembered for anything personally, it would be for being a good father, being a faithful husband, and being a reliable friend and neighbor. Professionally, I would like to be known as a knowledgeable insurance professional, an inspirational leader, and a good steward of the company under my watch.
Certainly, I could really see that. And for those, Fred, who want to learn more about yourself or Frankenmuth Insurance, what are some good resources for the listeners out there?
Yeah, I would say if you want to learn a little bit more about our company, definitely go out to our website. You can also look at LinkedIn and look at Facebook. We have an active marketing campaign where we put little tidbits about certain types of coverages, like tip of the day and things like that. I'm out there on LinkedIn. If you go out on YouTube, you can search our videos. If you type in Frankenmuth Insurance, you'll see that video from me from 2015 with the looking a little younger, different pair of glasses, and but there's all different ways you can learn about our company.
Of course, I appreciate you mentioning those. And thank you, everyone, for listening to another or watching another great episode of Mint Money. Please don't forget to follow our podcast so you don't miss when new episodes drop. Thanks, Fred.
Thank you. Appreciate it.